Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in the Run Breiter Podcast. This is episode number 54, and today we have an extremely special podcast going down. We got Colleen Mock in the house, in person. She's actually my girlfriend, but she's a runner. So we are having her on the podcast, giving her the opportunity to talk about her love of running today. Colleen, how are you doing, besides laughing and giggling?
I'm doing great. Apparently, I just laugh a lot, so...
She does laugh a lot. She does. Well, I'm glad to hear you're doing great.
Yeah.
It's nice to have you on the podcast. So, I know a lot of people don't know Colleen that are listening. Maybe a few of you do. And for those who don't know you, I think something people would really appreciate is just general background about who you are and maybe what got you into running.
I am currently in graduate school. I'm getting my PhD in clinical psychology, and I think of that as like endurance academics. And so then finding a way to kind of get through that, running has helped a lot, running and hiking. I've always really liked running, but it's kind of fluctuated a bit throughout my life, and I've picked it up and just haven't put it back down yet. So.
There you go. When did you actually start running? Was it during your academic journey of sorts? I know you've told me, but for the listener here.
Yeah. Great question, Sam. So I ran cross country exactly 1 year in high school, and I quit like a week or two into the second year, I think. I played soccer all through high school, and I just wasn't very good at anything that had to do with running, and so I struggled through it, but yeah, I started in high school and just kept going after high school just because I liked running, even though I wasn't really great at it. So.
I hear ya. So, of course, it's, most of your running career, it sounds like, as far as commitment has came after high school.
Yep.
More recently over the last year or two at this point, which is great. Do you, in any way, feel any level of regret that you didn't commit to running through high school, or where is your head at with that? Because I think a lot of people, myself included, like at certain points in life, regret the fact that they took time off of running, took a break from running. But how do you actually feel about it from your standpoint?
Yeah, I don't really regret it. I didn't, I wasn't really stagnant. So even though I wasn't super into running, I would fluctuate, and there would be like months at a time where I would be really into running. I never could get good at running up until about a year ago because I got a deviated septum corrected. And so I don't regret it in the sense that like I don't really think that I would have had much success until I had that corrected anyway. Mm-hmm. And I was still staying active, so I just kind of was doing whatever was interesting to me at the time, whether it was riding my bike, whether it was doing stair workouts, whether it was running randomly or hiking. So I don't really regret it because I still had a lot of fun. So.
No, that's great. I mean, and everyone's story is different, right? Not everyone has a clear and defined path. There's no structure or rules that are associated with running, so I'm glad you don't have regret. I didn't think you did, but I think it's good to show some context for some other people, who might be listening and could be a little older, for example. I think that we have a lot of older listeners to the podcast who are 40, 50 years old, and they might first, be getting into running now. And for them, they might have a little bit of regret. Oh, I wish I would have gotten to this when I was younger. You're obviously not that age. But I think, from both our ends, we can agree, like, there's no ideal time to start. You just start when you're ready for it in your life, and you make the most of it at that point. And I think that's really positive. So obviously now you're into it, and you're training for a pretty big race that I'm excited I'll be joining you on. Do you mind sharing with the listeners what you're currently training for?
Yeah, so I am currently training for the Austin Rattler 50K. It is a qualifier for a larger race.
What's the larger race?
The, the Leadville 100. I think it would be really cool to do the Leadville 100. I think I have a decent chance of qualifying through the Austin Rattler. It's the biggest race that I've done. I have not done a marathon. I have only done a half marathon and a 10K. But I believe in myself, so there we go.
Nice. For those who don't know, a 50K is equivalent to 31.25 miles. So Colleen is taking a slightly unconventional route of going straight from the half marathon being her longest ever race to the metric system built 50K, even though she is from Illinois. She's going after it, which I think is really exciting. And so why though? Why are you taking a little bit of this unconventional route of, instead of crawl, walk, running into races, which I think a lot of people do? I mean, yes, a half marathon, I think you're definitely way past the crawl, walk phase, but you went from probably running a decent distance to now you're really doing something pretty heavy. What was the motivation for this?
Yeah, so over the summer, actually, whenever we met at the Leadville 100. I was pacing for someone that I went to high school with, and I was pacing for my buddy Spencer, and Spencer needed a pacer, and I said that I could do maybe like 15 miles. I was like, you can get a solid 15 out of me, and like anything after that is just very questionable, but like I could try. And I ended up pacing him for 26 miles kind of on a whim. And once I did that, I was like, if I can just do 26 miles without really training for it, like I probably have pretty good stamina, pretty good endurance. I kind of want to do a bit more. And I really like trail running. It's a lot easier on your joints. It's a lot prettier. So I don't know, the 50K kind of made sense. And since I had just paced level 100, I was like, I really want to do that. So I might as well go for the race that'll let me do that.
Yeah. And for those who don't know much about the Leadville 100, it's located in Leadville, Colorado. The altitude reaches heights of as high as like 12,000 feet?
I think so.
12,000 feet. So Denver, Colorado, for perspective, which was very hard for me to begin my training here this summer from a breathing standpoint, is about 5,200 feet. So we're talking twice that and more than twice that. And Colleen, who was the longest distance you ever ran prior to the Leadville 100 pacing experience, was it that half marathon, or have you ever gone on runs that were in between that 13 to 26 miles prior?
I don't think so. I used to go on runs. I've not told you this. I used to go on runs, and I had absolutely no idea how long they were. Like, I would run for hours and not know the distance because I was just running.
Watchless.
Yeah.
You can do that. It's allowed.
Yeah.
People don't believe you.
I know. Not on Strava either, so like, does it count even with the watch? I don't know. But I mean, I would just go out and just run and run and run. I think 13 miles is the longest. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is somewhat of a missing beauty about running today, because running has been so tied to technology. I mean, it feels like, 1 out of every 5 competitive runners probably has some sort of social media page where they're broadcasting their runs, and probably over 95% of runners, I'm just guessing, but I assume, are using a running watch to, keep track of their runs, keep track of their paces, their distance. And when I was younger, specifically in high school, I was actually doing the same thing as you when I was training like over the summer and just having fun with running. I'd run watchless. I would get lost in the run and not really worry about the time or the distance. And I think there's a lot of mental benefits with that in the sense that you feel a little bit more free. Maybe you could speak to it a little bit, Colleen, but at least from my experience when I used to do that, it's not about the metrics or what anyone else thinks. It's just about enjoying nature and enjoying the run. But do you mind like talking about like that experience a little bit more about, you know, how that was running watchless, and is it something that sometimes maybe you miss at this point? I'm curious on that too.
Yeah. I don't think that I miss it. I think that, so whenever I did it, it was after high school, so it was after I'd done like a season and 2 weeks of cross country. But at that point, like, most of the runs that I did were like, you know, maybe 3 miles. And so I knew like a 3-mile route. That was about it. And I didn't care about miles. I had not gotten into like a competitive racing experience. I hadn't even like considered people like keeping track of how many miles they ran each week or like caring about their times that much. I like, it just didn't occur to me that people like really cared that much about running, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
I mean, I feel like until like the last like 5 or 6 years, I didn't recognize how much people cared about it either.
Yeah, so I just was going out. I had a lot of anxiety at the time. I was in undergrad. And so I just was going out to run. I am from Illinois, but I went to SIUE, which has a very beautiful nature reserve campus, and there's tons of trails, tons of like a paved bike trail that I would run on all the time and ride my bike on. And so it was really nice after classes or after work or after both classes and work to be able to just go out and run and kind of unplug, only pay attention to music and just run until I felt like I had gotten what I needed out of the run.
Nice. Yeah, I appreciate that story. And, you know, listen, if you're taking a listen to this podcast and you normally run with a watch, maybe try it without one time. Or if you only run without a watch, you know, it's always good to try like different things and mix it up, I think, with running, because running can be so competitive, or not competitive, so repetitive. And so finding ways to make it a little bit more of a unique experience is, I think, something that helps with that consistency that we're all trying to go after. Now, Colleen, I want you to talk about a little bit regarding where you're currently running. For those who don't know, Colleen lives in Colorado Springs, which has a lot of incredible areas to run. I've been spending a lot more time there than I expected to prior to moving to Denver, which is A-okay, because there's a lot of great trails there and good running opportunities. But do you want to talk about like what a typical run in Colorado Springs looks like, or the array of running options that you find yourself in a cadence with?
Yeah. So Colorado Springs is super hilly. Like, even the city, even if you're road running, you're probably going to get like 400 to 600 foot elevation gain in any run that you do on the road, which is kind of crazy because usually you can do like a relatively flat run like here in Denver or in my hometown. It's just not possible in Colorado Springs. So depending on what I want to do, I go to like a handful of different trails or different roads that I like to run on. Palmer Park is where I like to go if I'm doing a technical trail. It's very rocky, it's very hilly. It's a single track technical trail. That's what I like to do threshold runs on to try and match terrain. Probably overmatch terrain, maybe make it a little harder. But it's also just a very beautiful, like, a lot of people like to go hiking there, so it's very nice. Lots of beautiful views. I also really enjoy, lately I've been doing a lot of Rampart Range Road running, which is really hard to say. But it starts in Garden of the Gods, which is in the Colorado Springs city. And it eventually goes all the way to Woodland Park, which is like on the other side of Pikes Peak. I have not ran that far on it, but as far as I can tell, for about 10 miles, the road goes straight up. And by that point, I usually turn around and then I come straight back down for another 10 miles. But it's where I like to do a lot of my long runs at. You get a lot of really good elevation gains. So I think if I do a 20-mile long run on Rampart Range Road. I get just under 3,000 foot elevation gain on the first 10 miles going up, turn around and come back down. And that's very good, very beautiful. Lots of, like I said, you start in Garden of the Gods, so very beautiful views there. You're kind of running on the north side of Pikes Peak, so you get really nice view of Pikes Peak, of some canyons, and then you get to see Colorado Springs and Manatee Springs as well. I do like to run in Garden of the Gods too. And then, yeah, I do some road running on easy days. Still a little hilly, but gotta do what you gotta do.
Awesome. And within all these different trails and routes that you like to run on, what is your training looking like for a 50K? Because I'm sure there's some people here who are listening who never perhaps imagine themselves doing a 50K, but maybe there's some people who want to achieve that goal. And so any, quick tidbits of the training, a little bit of structure for someone who might be thinking about signing up for a challenge like this, what is that looking like for you?
Well, the first thing I think is to recognize that you're probably the only thing that's holding yourself back. I started off this semester, it feels weird as a 26-year-old to say semester, but again, still in school. I started off this semester kind of like eyeing a marathon, and I was like, I don't have time to train for a marathon. 26 miles, I don't have time to train for that. And then like 2 weeks later, I was like, better sign up for 31 miles because I suddenly have time for that. But the training I found to be really enjoyable. Does it take time? Yes. But I was running, before I started a structured training plan, courtesy of Sam, I would just kind of go out and run and do whatever, and was probably overtraining. And so then whenever you sent me the running plan, it helped me stop myself from running way too many miles because I would have gotten burnt out before the run. But the plan has structured me to do like a peak mileage week, I think last week, of right around 60 something miles. This was my fault. I did not space out my long runs. So at one point I had logged 70 miles and hiked a 14er in 7 days, and then was like, I need to stop that. But I did that to myself.
A 14er, for those who don't know, is a 14,000 elevation level hike, which is pretty intense. Go on.
Okay. But again, I did that to myself because that's just how it worked out timing-wise for those long runs. But my peak mileage week, like I said, was about 60 miles, which sounds like a lot because it is. But it's also doable whenever you break it into, like, you're not running, 10 miles a day, 6 days a week. You have some shorter runs, you have some workout runs that are, like, maybe hill sprints, which I did not like seeing the word hill and sprint next to each other, but I did them. And then, we have some that are threshold runs, and so those are more based off of time with a mileage goal. And then you have your long runs. And the long runs, this week I have an 18-mile long run to do, which I will probably do on Rampart Range Road, or I might go someplace else if I don't want to get that much elevation gain. But a lot of it has been a lot of easy runs, so longer distance easy runs, a couple of workouts, about 2 workouts a week, I think is what about 2 workouts a week, and then a long run.
Nice.
Yeah.
What would you say has been the hardest part about training for a 50K? Obviously you have, consider the full aspect of your life when we talk about school and work can be the physical part, whatever it might be. And then I'd like to hear, like, what has made this the most, what about this has been the most fulfilling or easiest to continue doing the way you have been?
I think the hardest part about the training is, for me, nutrition. I think it's so hard to eat as much food as, like, you need to eat running. Like,
so what do you need to eat? We'll start with that. Or what have you been eating?
Yeah,
It's different for everyone, right? But
yeah, I mean, I still probably don't eat like that much in comparison to like a lot of people, I would say. I focus on trying to eat like more quality food. But I do like, I'm a sucker for pastries, I will say that. I like a good coffee shop pastry. Yeah, a good donut. Yeah, it's great. But I try to eat like a lot more fruit, a lot more starch, a lot more carbs, but it's just so hard to like eat all the time. And then it was really hard to train myself to like eat while running, or like eat and then immediately turn around and run. Because I've had like stomach issues off and on throughout my life. And so like it was crazy for me to think that last weekend when I did a long run, I literally ate like a running meal as I'm like running up and then down like the foothills of a mountain.
What was that running meal?
It was the spring oatmeal fruit running meal, which was amazing. It had like, I think it had like 300 calories or something in it, which was really nice because a lot of the other running things only have like 100 calories, so then you're just kind of like eating a lot of those. But this was like an actual like meal, and it had really good flavor to it. It was
mostly carb filled, I would assume, or
yeah, easy to digest carbs. It had really good, like I said, really good flavor. Lots of like seasoning, like spices. There's like chai seasoning in it, I guess.
Nice.
Yeah. But it was nice to feel like full, but not overly full. And yeah, it was good. It's also really hard as a graduate student because as the semester fluctuates, like we have a lot of assignments to do. I have independent research to do. So like the peak week for training also was like peak week for everything else in my life too. So that was pretty hard. Like yeah, it was pretty hard. But I would say overall nutrition has been hard to train myself to like eat while running, to find like the nutrition stuff, because I didn't even get into like fueling while running, which is gonna sound insane, but I didn't even start doing that until Leadville 100, which was like after my half marathon. It was after my 10K, so I haven't actually like trained with fuel until the past like 2 months. So
yeah, I mean, I think the truth is like that's okay. And what I like about your story, and it's obviously not the full reason I wanted you on the podcast, but I think that's something a lot of people can relate to, is the fact that you haven't been really consistently running for many years, but you're accomplishing a lot of great milestones in a quick way. I think a lot of people see the sport of running and they think, oh, like a marathon, I can never do that, or oh, that's going to take 5-10 years of training. This girl's running a 50K after she was kind of just going out there and running on a whim and didn't really have much structure to what she was doing, and wasn't even fueling for her runs. The first time that she actually really had a strong fuel plan was at the Leadville 100, probably just because you needed it to feel good and there was free stuff at stations. But the point is, 1% of people ever run a marathon. 50K, I'm sure that percentage is obviously lower. So you're doing something that's very rare, but it shows you don't have to know everything to sign up for these experiences and go far with these experiences. I think so many people think like, okay, I'm signing up for a marathon, I need to know everything. And yes, like the more you know, the better prepared you'll be, the more likelihood for a faster time or success will come. But sometimes it's about going out there and scraping your knee and going through the motions and experience, and then failing a little bit and then learning for next time. And then you learn from those experiences and you only get better and better. Like, yes, you can listen to podcast episodes and watch YouTube videos and talk to a coach, have a coach do all these different things, right? But like sometimes it's okay to just do something and just try it and like learn from that. And I think like you're a really good example of that. I think more people could really learn a lot about themselves and more about the sport by taking a little bit of risks, and like worst case, like you drop out in the race and then you try again next time. But I know you're going to be ready. You're doing the right things and preparing at this point, which is really exciting. So thank you for sharing what's been hard throughout training. I'd like to learn what has made this training easy and fulfilling for you? Because I know that speaking to you a decent bit, there's been highs and lows to it, but there's been a lot of highs that I think some people would appreciate to hear about.
Yeah. Well, I would say one of the highs is meeting you for sure. But
Thank you.
but I think what has been really cool has been thinking and learning about myself, like learning what I can do and what I'm capable of. I was holding myself back. Sure, like my sinuses were holding me back for sure because I couldn't breathe. But even after the surgery, I was like, I can do a half marathon, and that was like really freaking hard. Like that hurt a lot. Maybe it wouldn't have hurt as much if I was training a bit more proper for it. But it was like, still, even though I did half a marathon, I was like, that hurt so much. I can't even imagine doing 2 of those. Like, I just can't. I can't do it. And then eventually, like, just essentially getting into situations in which I was like, oh no, I can run 26 miles if I need to, or I can do this thing. It's been really rewarding to find that out about myself. I mentioned having done a 14er in the middle of peak week. The specific mountain that I did is a pretty tough mountain to do, and I did it specifically for cross training purposes. Like, I knew that it was in the middle of a really hard week of training, and I still wanted to do it because for me, it's not just about running. It's about proving that you can do something that's hard to yourself. And doing that hike was really important to me because the entire time I did not want to do the hike. I was tired. I hadn't slept well. I was like emotionally tired. I was cognitively tired. I was physically tired because it was peak week. And I still did the damn thing. And was proud of it and was happy and I had a good time eventually, right? But I think it's just rewarding to find out what you can do whenever you either just, endure it and go through and succeed, or if you just are really good at training.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that you just brought up there that we alluded to a little bit at the beginning portion of the episode was some of these 14ers you've done. I think people don't always recognize the benefits of cross-training and doing other things and how they can impact running. And I think that has helped you a lot being fit through your life. But hiking is, I think, a great way to like intro yourself into running a bit and go through those conditions. And obviously, when you go ahead and you do the Leadville 100 one day, there's going to be a hiking component to that race. But if you don't mind, like telling people about like your passion for hiking, maybe talk about some of the highlights quickly that you've done. I think that would be really cool to also bring up here quickly.
Yeah. So hiking. Before I got super into running this past year, I was like obsessed with the Manitou Incline, which is a hike that is straight up the side of a mountain. 2,768 stairs that are not even stairs, and you gain around 2,000 foot elevation gain in like 0.8 miles or something. And I did that probably like 40 something times in like 4 months or something. It was something crazy. And it was really like, it's really important to me to get out, to get into nature. There's a huge community around like doing the incline. And so being involved in that, it would be probably one of the highlights was the amount of support that you get while doing that hike. It's also considered an extreme hike or a very dangerous hike because of the physical challenge that it creates. It's not just an endurance challenge. I would say it's really a strength challenge too. And that would be one of the highlights, I think, was learning to love just a hike that most people absolutely hate. And then Mount Sneffels, which is out near like Montrose and Ouray, Colorado, is a pretty challenging hike. It was my first 14er that I did that had class 3 scrambling, which means that you're using your hands for part of it. And that was very rewarding, very much a highlight. It was one of the first times that I was like, I did a hike that's like actually pretty dangerous to do. And then Long's Peak, which was the 14er that I did 2 weeks ago. Those would be the highlights, I would say. Yeah.
I love that. And for someone who wants to perhaps maybe not take running super seriously and do a 50K, but maybe they just like the outdoors. Maybe they just like seeing nature and exploring and all of that. I think there's a big market in that area, and that's okay. How are you actually finding like all these different hikes, and like how would you recommend someone going about finding a good fit hike for them that it's going to be the right level of challenge for what they would be looking for? I feel like you're pretty knowledgeable on that.
Thank you. I have gotten burnt by All Trails more times than I can count.
What is All Trails, for those who don't know?
All Trails is an app that is supposed to tell you the like metrics of a hike, and then people can leave comments and reviews that tell you like about the trail, about the terrain, all the things. And you go in there very naive and you like think that you can trust these people who are leaving these comments, and you can't, because they will tell you that it is like the world's hardest hike, and it's like maybe it was for them, but it's not for me. And so like finding the match off of like hearing from strangers is just pretty impossible in my opinion. There will be times I read reviews and I'm like, oh, it can't be that bad, and then I do the hike and I'm like, nope, it was like 10 times worse. They actually undersold it. Or the opposite, they say that it's really horrible and it's not that bad either. So what I've found to be useful is whenever I hike, I do tend to hike by myself, which is not necessarily smart, but I feel comfortable doing that. So I tend to talk to people, and if I'm doing a hike with other people who are doing the hike, presumably we can at least be on balance in that respect, as if we're both doing the incline, for example, and both of us seem to be having a equivalently hard time doing it, they might know of trails that I would like that aren't too challenging, aren't too hard. Over this past year, I've gained a lot of endurance and fitness, and so it's not as hard for me if I get into a hike that is more challenging than I expected. But a lot of recommendations I get from other people who are running, other people who are hikers. Sometimes I just keep my eyes peeled. I like to have my GPS on like the aerial, like the satellite view, so I can kind of see like what the terrain is when I'm driving by in case there's something cool off the side of the road. But
yeah, no, that's really helpful. I think in short, All Trails is a great resource, but don't fully trust it. I think word of mouth and finding a community of people, whether that is in real time when you're in the trails or people that you know that are doing something that looks intriguing to you and asking about their experience, is going to really allow you to go into these experiences prepared, because I'm sure you could attest to it. If you're going to do something very adventurous, yes, there's hikes that are simple, flat terrain, shortened distance, whatever it might be. You want to make sure you're going prepared for those more challenging experiences for yourself, whatever that might look like. One thing I want to ask you about too, Colleen, obviously you do a lot of hiking and running, but you also do a decent bit of strength training when it comes to your training. So do you mind walking through that a little bit as far as what that routine typically looks like?
yeah, that's also less structured than probably most people. I'm gonna sound like the most basic like girl in the gym ever. I love leg day like so much, and so if I had it my way, I would only train like legs and abs. But like I recognize that for some reason I should have arms too that are a little strong. But I like to rotate through. So I don't like really break up my upper body. I don't really break up my lower body. I don't do like a hamstring day and a quad day and then a glute day. I basically do legs and abs, and then so the legs and abs I tried to get a lot more functional training in. I like to do like hip stability stuff, especially since I do trail running. I like to do ankle stability because I have pretty weak ankles from whenever I played soccer, so I like to do some strength training for my ankles too. And then of course I do like to train other muscles that are really important for running. So your glutes are important whenever you're running, especially uphill, because it can take some of that pressure off of your hip flexors. I do like to train my quads a bit, but I don't really train as much for physique as a lot of women in the gym might, because I want just to have more functionality to it. I train my abs and my core with the purpose of like keeping my spine safe while running. So I don't do a lot of core exercises that actually require you to twist. So I don't do like Russian twists. I don't do anything like that, because the purpose of your core is to keep your spine from moving. So I think it's kind of like weird to, not dissing people that do that. If that works for you, that's great. I just think it's weird to like do a core exercise that requires you to spin whenever the whole purpose of your core is to like stop you from spinning. I don't know. And then when it comes to upper body, I like to do, similarly, I still do functional upper body movements. So I don't just do like shoulder press. I also do like the rotation stuff and things to try and protect like my joints as long as I can. I often think in case of falling, I want to be able to like land and not like hurt my shoulders. So I'm also very clumsy, so I just plan for that. It's really unstructured. Yeah, exactly. It's really unstructured, and I try to be functional, and that's about all I got.
Cool. How'd you learn all this about strength training? I'm asking you more in the sense that I think a lot of people might be starting to get into running, but they don't know how to build a strength training routine. And so how did this all come about? And I know it's not fully structured for you, but you obviously know the motions and why they're important. So how can someone else learn about that besides re-listening to your description there?
I would say like if you're trying to do strength training that's functional, and you might not know like the proper form or like the exact thing that you're doing, I think like you can get a good feel as to if like the motion that you're doing with strength training feels like the motion that you would do whenever you're doing that activity in general, then it's probably going to be good for you. And so kind of recognizing that like the movements that you do with strength training shouldn't actually be too far off of whatever it is that you're strength training for, because for me, the strength training is to back up and to support and strengthen and prevent injury. And so like if I'm doing some crazy like weight thing that is not like I'm never doing this movement or anything close to it while I'm running, then it's probably not going to help me running. So I just try to focus on if it feels similar to like a natural movement that I do, and go from there. I don't know if that really answers it.
It does, yeah. And then I want to bring it back to something we were talking about earlier, this goal, whether it's something that might be a short-term goal or long-term. You know, we don't want to put too much pressure on you, but we know it's something that you expressed interest in, the 100-mile Leadville race, the Leadville 100, that is. And why 100 miles? Why does that distance interest you, especially sitting here knowing the longest race you've ever competed in is a half marathon, but your eyes are on that? Why 100 miles?
It's not about the miles. It sounds weird to say.
No, it's respectful. Let's hear why.
Yeah, I just really love Leadville. I think that, of course, it sounds really cool to run 100 miles, right? But the Leadville 100 is a very challenging race. It's very well known. It's very respected. I would say if you're a finisher, and I just want to be a part of that. I guess the atmosphere of the Leadville 100 is absolutely insane. And so like being part of that as a pacer, I was like, there's no way that I don't want to do this, right? Like I have to do this. I have to be part of this. I have to be in this. And so it's more so like I just really want to be a part of that race as a runner as opposed to a pacer. The 100 miles I think is pretty cool. I think it's very impressive, but I think it's more so the community around it, the atmosphere, the scenery. Even before like having my eyes set on Leadville 100, I just was obsessed with going out, climbing Mount Albert, hanging out in Leadville, hanging out by Twin Lakes, all those things. So, yeah, it's more so the race than the miles, I guess.
Don't they have shorter races in Leadville? Or?
I don't want to talk about that.
I'm just saying. You want to see the whole thing twice in one sitting.
It's not the same atmosphere. It's not the same.
It sounds like it's the community.
Yeah. I did the Leadville 10K. So my race trajectory was a half marathon and then a 10K and now a 50K. And so I did the Leadville 10K, and it was very fun. There was a lot of, like, good hype to it. But the Leadville 10K is not pretty by any means. Like, it's the first 3 and the last 3 miles of the Leadville 100. And so you get, like, you get the atmosphere, but you don't get, like, the benefit of seeing, like, these really cool parts of Colorado that are just phenomenal places to see. And so it was like, I'm almost there, like, I get the feel, I get the support, but I don't get all the beauty, and, like, I just want all of it wrapped up in this, like, really painful bow.
That's great. No, I respect that. I was just messing around a little bit, but I think it will be a very cool experience for you. It's something that maybe one day I'll go after. I'm not there yet, but, you know, I'm inspired by the people who chase after that goal. And on top of that, you know, you're only 26 years old. You've done a decent amount when it comes to running at this point. You have some short-term goals that are very massive in the community or just in general, that a lot of people would never think about doing. But long-term speaking, you know, this is not meant to put pressure on you, but just more get a better idea of like what your future is going to look like with running, you know, for anyone who might want to like follow along to your journey. What are some things that you are looking after in the future? Are there certain things that you're trying to achieve, or it's even okay to say like, hey, like, I don't know, I'm just focused on like the, you know, the 50K and the 100-mile race, and from there we'll just play it by ear. What are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, so...
And it doesn't always have to be about running. It could be about hiking too, or other fitness as well.
Yeah. I would like to do... There are a couple of races that I would like to do eventually. The Pikes Peak Marathon, I think sounds really great. For those who don't know, Pikes Peak is America's mountain. It's what America the Beautiful was inspired by. Pikes Peak, and it is the mountain that is in Colorado Springs. It is the first 14er that I hiked, and so I'd really love to do the Pikes Peak Marathon one day. A record was actually just broke on the Pikes Peak ascent like last month, and that was really cool. And so I would like to do the Pikes Peak Marathon one day. With regard to hiking, I would like to get some more 14ers under my belt. I'm really happy to have Long's Peak in the bag, basically, because that's a pretty tricky one with weather. They're all tricky with weather, but I just would like to do more of those. I don't have one lined up goal-wise, but really we talked about doing some of the road marathons, like maybe the Chicago Marathon. I think those would be cool. I like running fast. I just like the trails more, I think. So I think I would dabble a bit more in some road marathons, but I think I'm going to be sticking to the trails and just finding out some pretty things to do. I think a rim to rim on the Grand Canyon would be fun, or a rim to rim would be cool. But yeah, we'll just see what happens.
Cool. That sounds great. Well, I think I would like to finish this off here by you just giving some last words in regards to knowing that a lot of people who listen to this episode, or the podcast in general, in this episode too, I'm sure, beginner runners who are trying to find that consistency and balance with aspects of their life. Obviously, you have a very inspiring story, and I appreciate you sharing that. Going through a PhD program, training for a 50K, doing other fitness activities too. Really putting a lot on your plate, but really gaining a lot, it sounds like, through this experience. It hasn't been perfect. You provided a bit of humility here about some of the challenges with it, but also shared some really good motivation and positivity towards what's really made this training worthwhile and what you're seeking out in the future too. What would you like to share though for some of the listeners regarding, someone maybe they're just trying to get into running, they're not finding the benefits that they might be looking for, and they kind of get in this pattern of getting into it, getting away from it. What would you like to share for something like that?
Yeah, I would definitely say that it's pretty normal. I was very inconsistent for a number of years, and really I've only been consistent in being active since like April of this year. And by saying consistent and being active, like working out multiple times a week. And I've went from, kind of running randomly to now training for a 50K in 6 months, 8 months. And so a lot of what was holding me back on that was my own thought process of like, wow, that half marathon was really hard. I don't even know if I want to do that again. And then realizing that like the terrain is a bit different, and maybe if I do trail running, I can do that a little bit easier, and like you get snacks along the way, and that's great. So I think realizing that what's holding you back is probably yourself, not always, but recognizing that if it's something that you want, it doesn't have to be perfect. There are a lot of runs that I have had that I have felt very frustrated with. I'm getting over a cold now, and so my runs this past week have not been pretty. And so then whenever that happens, sometimes I don't even listen to music. I just run and get back to the feel of it, kind of similar to taking the watch off. Other times I put on music that's really fun, really happy. I feel like I just went on a tangent.
I think biggest picture here is trying to find... I think biggest picture here, from what I'm hearing from you, is just trying to find ways that if consistency is hard for you, consistently finding ways to keep running interesting, to understand that yes, it's not always easy to get out there, but give yourself a little bit of an extra push, even on those challenging days. If you're feeling a little under the weather or tired or overwhelmed, you don't have to train for a 50K. You train for a 5K, and that makes a huge difference, I think, in anyone's life, to just be doing something for training.
Yeah, you're more likely to do something if you enjoy it. So make it enjoyable, even on days when you don't want to. I study psychology, so like sometimes you just have to force yourself to get started, and you'll find that even your worst run might be better than a day that you skipped running.
Thank you, Colleen, for joining the episode. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to spend all the time together that we have, and I look forward to being part of the 50K with you. For those who don't know, I'll be pacing her. I don't really know. I mean, it's probably going to be a challenge for me too, but my goal is to go out there and I sign up for the race and try to complete it and run it with Colleen and be there as a motivator, hold all her stuff. And so we'll be making some content there, broadcasting that journey to the best of our ability. And, I'm rooting for you the rest of your training. I know it hasn't been an easy training, but you're definitely, with this structure, I think, going to really be prepared to accomplish the goal that you have set.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being so supportive throughout this entire process.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this episode of the Run Breiter Podcast. If you did enjoy it, we would really appreciate it if you left 5 stars, recommend it to a friend. If maybe this episode for you is something that you enjoyed, but you know someone specifically that could benefit from it at a high level, that always means a lot. And if you need any running tips or advice, or even a free custom running plan like I made for Colleen over here, reach out to me directly. Go on runbreiter.com. And as always, don't forget to run brighter, and we'll see you back on another one here soon. Thanks.